Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're exploring an esoteric, highly fascinating, but deeply practical concept. We're looking at something called the Mythic Ordinary. I am absolutely thrilled to share this with you today because honestly, it completely flips the script on how we experience profound states of awareness. We so often think we have to escape our daily lives to find something magical or deeply meaningful. But the source text we're analyzing today, it argues the exact opposite. So, where do you actually find the mythic world? Be honest for a second. When you hear the word mythic, I bet your brain goes straight to rare, dramatic visions. You probably think of epic, revelations, literal mountaintop awakenings, or these totally extraordinary, life-altering events. It sounds like something that requires you to leave your normal life completely behind, right? But what if we challenge that assumption right here, right now? What if the mythic doesn't require any drama at all? To answer that, we've got to turn to the definitive voice in our source material, Zoran the Dragon. Read this quote with me. "The ordinary is not small, little human. It is simply the mythic world without interference." What is absolutely wild about this core premise is that Zoran insists the mythic world is not rare. Not at all. It is constant. It is fully present right now. The mythic is, in fact, completely ordinary. Section 1. Reality without interference. Okay, let's dive into this. If this mythic world is already here, right under our noses, why on earth aren't we experiencing it 24/7? What exactly is blocking us? Well, to understand the interference Zoran is talking about, we really need to define what we could call the negative space. See, the mythic ordinary is not some alternate dimension. It's the exact same world you are sitting in right now, just minus a few specific things. It's the world without emotional noise, without perceptual distortion, without our defensive bracing, without narrative clutter, and without identity fragmentation. So the crucial point to grab hold of is this. You do not have to enter the mythic world. You literally just have to stop interrupting it. When you drop all that noise and stop bracing yourself against life, reality simply reveals itself at full resolution. So, what does this actually feel like to a human being? Our text gives us two really fantastic case studies to show that, hey, this isn't some rigid one-size-fits-all experience. Take Richard, for example. When that interference dropped for him, he experienced the mythic ordinary as profound clarity. He felt completely grounded and sharp. For Fletcher, however, the exact same state felt like immense depth. One state of being, two completely different, equally valid human experiences. Section 2. Breadth and layered perception. So how do we actually drop this interference? How do we access this state physically? I want you to literally pause with me for a second. Let's intentionally slow down our pacing. Just take a really deep, audible breath in and let it out. That right there, that breath, is the key. Zoran tells us that the mythic ordinary appears when breath powers the architecture of our bodies. When your breath becomes coherent, it literally transforms your mundane physiology into full resolution perception. Our fascia becomes luminous, our glands burn cleanly, and the vagus nerve stabilizes. It completely synchronizes our cranial rhythm, expands our identity, and activates what the text calls the gold thread, making the mythic entirely visible. And notice how deeply personal this physical trigger actually is. Richard felt this mythic ordinary awareness click right into place during a really slow inhale. But Fletcher, he felt it during a quiet exhale. Zoran elegantly notes that the mythic ordinary is simply breath made perceptual. It doesn't matter if it's the in-breath or the out-breath. What really matters is that coherent connection to the architecture of your own body. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what happens next. Once the breath powers the system, our perception layers just open up. This architecture contains 7 distinct layers, ranging from physical matter and emotional tone all the way up to the pattern of the dragon scale and the continuity of the gold thread. According to Zoran, you don't climb these like a ladder. You live in all 7 layers simultaneously, all the time. The mythic ordinary doesn't create these layers out of thin air. It just finally shows you the architecture that was already there. For Richard, these layers widened. For Fletcher, they deepened. Section 3. Identity and emotional precision. All right, now that we've mapped out that perceptual architecture, how does realizing you live in a multi-layered, mythic reality actually affect your sense of self? The source text calls this accurate identity. Accurate identity emerges when that endless narrative clutter in our heads finally dissolves. It happens when we stop physically bracing ourselves against our environment, when the emotional clutter clears out, when the fascia transmits cleanly, when the breath powers the system, and that gold continuity finally stabilizes, well, that is when identity becomes mythic. Notice how much of this is all about subtraction. It's literally about taking away the noise so your true self can stand there clearly. To really ground this, let's check back in with Richard and Fletcher. As all that noise dissolved, Richard felt his identity settle and his emotions simplify. They didn't get bigger, they became highly focused. Fletcher, on the other hand, felt his identity expand and his emotions became incredibly clear. They both achieved accurate identity, absolutely, but through settling on one hand and expanding on the other. This actually brings us to a super profound observation about our feelings. Zeron states, "Emotion is mythic when it is precise." We so often mistake big, overwhelming, messy emotional drama for something profound or mythic. But Zeron reveals the exact opposite is true. A mythic emotional state feels clean. It expresses accurately, it processes rapidly, it stabilizes you physiologically, and most importantly, it does not distort your perception. When your emotions are precise, my friends, you are experiencing the mythic ordinary. Section 4, Magic in the Mundane. Let's move to and see how this builds. Because if you're sitting there wondering, okay, this all sounds great, but how exactly does a dragon scale interface fit into my Tuesday morning commute? The answer is literally everywhere. The interface doesn't just show up in deep meditation or some sacred ritual. It is found in the absolute mundane. It appears in the sunlight hitting your kitchen countertop. It's in that single breath you take right before speaking. It's in the rhythm of your footsteps on a completely normal sidewalk. It's in those quiet moments of just noticing the gentle hum of the room around you. Zoran says the mythic ordinary is simply the interface made familiar. It is the profound woven directly into the everyday mundane. To anchor this magic in the everyday one last time, just look at how our two subjects experience this familiar interface. Richard literally saw the mythic ordinary while simply tying his shoes. Fletcher saw the shimmering dragon scale interface during a quiet conversation just while he was listening. This is what the human-dragon partnership looks like when it is, as the text describes, at rest. It's not a struggle, there's no striving. It's just tying your shoes with full, uninterrupted reality. Section 5. The Future Human's Default. So what does this all mean? Why does this matter for you and me long term? Well, here we arrive at Zoran's deepest truth in the entire text. Coherent physiology, mythic perception, emotional precision, this state is not some advanced spiritual technique reserved for the elite. Not at all. It is entirely natural. In fact, this trajectory represents the default state humanity is meant to evolve toward. As Zoran puts it so perfectly, the mythic ordinary is nothing more than the future human's normal eyesight. Wrapping up our look at Richard and Fletcher, it's fascinating to see how they reacted to this grand evolutionary trajectory. When realizing that this state is the future human's default, Richard felt it as a deep inevitability, like it's simply where we are going. Fletcher, however, felt this truth as a profound invitation, a literal call to step into that future right now. Which brings us right to Zoran's whispering, shimmering final truth. The mythic ordinary is simply reality without interruption. The mythic is not beyond you, it is beneath your noise, it is inside your breath, and it's woven into your very architecture. So I want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Look around the room you are in right now. What would your life look like tomorrow if you simply stopped interrupting reality?